All right, today we're going to dive into the mind of an absolute giant. We're talking about the Nobel Prize-winning physicist Yang Chen-Ning. This is a guy who spent his entire life trying to figure out the universe, and it led him to this incredible belief in a creator. So we're going to unpack what he meant by that and look at how one really fascinating article takes his ideas and builds this amazing argument about, well, about the nature of truth itself. Okay, so this quote is really our starting point. The world's structure is not accidental. I mean, just let that sink in for a second. When a guy like this, one of the sharpest minds of the 20th century, a person who lived and breathed the laws of physics, says the universe is not an accident, you've just got to pause and ask, right? What did he see that maybe the rest of us don't? And that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? He saw this beautiful, intricate design in the laws of physics, things like Maxwell's equations. But what or who did he think the designer was? Well, the answer he came to is probably a lot more subtle than you're thinking. So first up, let's explore how the sheer elegance and order of the cosmos led Jung to even consider a higher power. This is a conclusion that didn't come from a holy book, but from the raw, unfiltered awe he felt doing science. And this is absolutely key. The words he chose are super precise. When Yang said creator, you have to understand he wasn't talking about, some guy with a beard in the sky. Not at all. For him, it was this abstract, supreme intelligence. Think of it like the ultimate source code behind all those beautiful, elegant physical laws that make the universe tick. And you know what? He was in pretty good company. This wasn't some wild idea he had on his own. You look at Einstein, you look at Newton. They all peered deep into the fabric of reality and walked away with this feeling that there's a grand, organizing intelligence behind it all. It's this sense of reverence that comes directly from doing the math and seeing how beautifully it all fits together. Okay, so now the article we're looking at takes this sense of scientific awe and uses it as a jumping-off point. It connects this very modern scientific feeling to a very ancient theological idea. The source material throws this verse out there as a kind of bridge. The argument is basically this. From a Christian perspective, that eternal power and divine nature that scientists like Yang are observing in the cosmos, well, that's a direct glimpse of God's handiwork. And this brings us to the real heart of the article's argument. It sets up this huge contrast, right? On one side, you've got the scientist creator, this abstract, distant principle. And on the other side, you have the biblical idea of a father, someone personal, relational, and, well, loving. The article basically says that scientists like Yang are incredible at figuring out the what, but Christianity claims it can tell you about the who. So now we're at the central conflict of this whole idea, the chasm between an impersonal designer God and a personal father God. And according to the source we're looking at, this one distinction, it changes literally everything. And here is Jung's biggest objection, laid out plain and simple. An abstract creator, he could get behind that. But a God with a human-like personality, a human-shaped God, for him, that was a deal breaker. It seems like a gap that you just can't cross. But this is where the article pulls its most fascinating move. It takes that very thing that Yang rejects, the idea of a human-shaped God, and instead of trying to explain it away, it holds it up and says, no, you don't understand. This isn't the problem. This is the answer. So let's actually unpack that. How can that be the answer? Well, the article's response to the physicist's logical problem is found in this core Christian concept of the Incarnation, the idea of the Word made flesh. And the whole argument really hinges on this single famous quote from Jesus. The source presents these three little claims, the way, the truth, and the life, as a direct, personal, and complete answer to the very questions that a seeker like Yang Chen-Ning spent his whole life asking. So let's break it down. First, the truth. It suggests the ultimate reality isn't a principle or an equation, but a person. Second, the life. This means the creator isn't some distant observer, but someone who actually jumped into the mess of human existence. Joy, pain, the whole thing. And finally, the way. This person becomes the actual direct bridge connecting us to that same magnificent creator that scientists can only admire from afar. Okay, to bring this all home, the article uses this really powerful final metaphor. It's meant to show the difference between these two ways of knowing, the way of the scientist and the way of the believer. So picture this. You've got the world's greatest minds, people like Yang, standing before this huge sealed door. They've studied it, measured it, and their logic tells them without a doubt a brilliant designer has to be on the other side. They are filled with awe, with reverence, but they're still on the outside looking in. But then, the article flips the script. It says, Christianity is like hearing the lock on that very same door click from the inside. The designer doesn't just stay behind the door. He opens it, steps out, and offers not just proof that he's there, but an invitation, a relationship. And just like that, the whole game shifts from distant observation to a personal connection. And, kind of beautifully, the article brings it all back to Yang's own wisdom. He had this great way of describing knowledge as this growing circle. The more you learn, the bigger the circle gets, but that just means the edge, the circumference of what you don't know, also gets bigger. It's a recipe for profound humility. And right there, that scientific humility, the article says, is the perfect handshake moment. It's that point where we finally admit the limits of our own reason. And in that space, we become open to a totally different way of knowing, one that's based not just on what we can prove, but on trust. So after all of that, the whole journey through physics and theology and philosophy, it boils down to this one final provocative question. Is the ultimate truth of the universe something we're meant to figure out, like a cosmic puzzle, or is it someone we're meant to meet? It's a question that puts the quest of the scientists right up against the claim of the Christian, and it leaves it to us to decide what we're really looking for.